Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you were ever the sort of child who went walking along a rocky beach and found yourself keeping going, wondering what was around the next corner, then you are an explorer. And I was just that sort of child, the sort of child who just kept on going. And maybe just like you as a child, I used to collect all sorts of things in my bedroom, like birds' nests and stamps and all sorts of wonderful things, fossils. And I had a dad who was a test pilot to develop the Vulcan bomber with others. And I was so excited by that. I thought one day I'm going to be some sort of adventurer, some sort of person who goes out there and does things in exciting places. And my dad used to tell me about exciting places like the Amazon and Borneo and New Guinea, and I thought one day I'm going to go out to these places. And I clung on to that dream of being some sort of explorer. I went through school, through university, still I had this dream, but I was getting a little bit worried by this stage because I realised I didn't have the one thing it really takes, money. I didn't have any money. And I thought, how am I going to deal with this? And I thought, oh, we'll put that aside. I got someone to help me out a little bit in the warehouse. I had a bit of an evening job in the warehouse and got together a bit of money, just enough money to get me to the place I dreamt of ever since a little boy. And that was the Amazon. There I was at last in this place I've been dreaming of ever since 10 years old. And I was there. And it was absolutely horrible. I could not believe it. Insects screaming in your ears. And I discovered you couldn't wear the same pair of underpants for more than, say, 2 weeks. I don't know if you've had this problem. But fungi starts to grow in all the crevices, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't just the wildlife that it was getting at me, it was the local people. I was paddling along my canoe one day and I found myself being shot at. And that was a nightmare because I was brought up in Shepherd's Bush in West London. Just the same there. I thought, what is going wrong with this place? Anyway, I was paddling my canoe along. And by the way, I should say, the thing about being shot at, I've discovered in my career since then, is that you can't stop and ask, why am I being shot at? You just have to sort of keep on going. Obviously, being British, I didn't want to show any panic, but these people were really close behind me. I was sort of 20 meters behind in their canoe. I do know also that I passed into the territory of Pablo Escobar. Do you remember him? He was someone knew him. He was the biggest drug cartel leader in the world at the time, the world's most wanted man. He was actually hiding down in the lowlands. This was on the border between Peru, Brazil, and Colombia. Later on, he was killed up in Medellin. That was about 6 months later. But I'd unfortunately strayed past his camp in my canoe. Anyway, he sent 2 assassins after me, and these bullets were going past my head. And I'd love to say that this is a sort of heroic chase, the great explorer in front. But it wasn't quite like that, because they kept on missing. I mean, it really looked like a question of incompetence. And sure enough, it was. It turns out that assassins, I'd never really thought about this before, assassins come in all sorts of different standards. It's like every other career, really. You get the first-class assassin, always gets the job done. Second-class assassin, more or less gets it right every time. And then you get your third-rate hitman, who always makes a mess of it. That's what I had. I was really lucky. These bullets kept on missing. I thought, what on earth is wrong with these people? And to be serious, it was a bad moment. I mean, it was a bad day. It really was. I was sort of waiting to die, rather, paddling along. But I was expecting, I'm a big target. These people very near. I thought, why haven't they got me? Turned around to discover that these people couldn't multitask. And the ladies here would say that all men are like this. But actually, it was true in this case. They couldn't paddle a canoe and kill someone at the same time. And it really was a bit of a problem. They obviously not for me, but they picked up the rifle and the canoe would swing round to the side. They had to have a little thing, put down the rifle, straighten up the canoe with a paddle, have another thing, pick up the rifle again. And the canoe would swing round another way. And I got away with it because last I saw these people was them going round and round slowly in the shallows. And I jumped into the forest, and suddenly I realised I was safe. This place that was so scary at first, a place that was full of all these nasty animals like piranhas and spiders and all the other sorts of things, it was on my side because it provided a total bit of security for me. Once I was hidden in those leaves, I was gone. These people couldn't find me, even though it was just a few yards away. And it was a huge lesson for me that day because I realised that this place that was so frightening actually could be a resource. It could be on my side. And of course it was on the side of the local people, the indigenous people, so-called tribal people. They lived in this place. It was their home. It gave them their food, their medicine, their shelter. I thought, one day, maybe even I can get it on my side. One day, even I can perhaps see this place as a resource. And that's what I decided to do. I thought, for the rest of my career, I'm not going to take backup, I'm not going to take companions, I'm going to settle with the local people who know what they're doing, and I'll try and live in the trees, as it were, a bit more like the locals. And that's what I set my mind to do. But I realized that really, if I ever knew about the rainforest, I should be able to actually cross this Amazon, and that became a sort of obsession with me through the years. I went to New Guinea, went to other places, but I thought, one day I want to go back to this place, the greatest rainforest in the world, and cross the whole lot. I thought, wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, it might be quite bad and dangerous and, in fact, deadly, but it would show that I had somehow learnt about this place and had come to see it something more like a home. So that was my little target. Seemed like quite a big target at the time. There is the Amazon basin, as I say, this great rainforest, the greatest in the world. That distance is something like 5,400 miles across. Actually, it isn't. It's 5,400 kilometres across. But given a few thousand kilometres difference, it's 3,000 miles. I mean, it's a long way, isn't it? Let's face it. I thought it was a long way. This bit is quite easy. I mean, it's not that easy, but it's quite easy. You go with the river flow. There's the main Amazon River, goes down to the mouth there, cut down from the northwest. You follow the river flow, so that's not too difficult. What I'd love to do is share with you my experience of the worst bit, really, the last 300 miles. And you're thinking, 300 miles? He's missed out those 2,700, whatever it is, the rest. But this was the key. This would be the big, big test. Could I walk through this forest? Because the rivers are all going the wrong way. You have to walk through that forest. Could I walk the 300 miles through Brazil, coming out in the Mato Grosso? I thought to myself, okay, what I've got to do is settle with those local people. Who are the local people I can settle with? Well, there were wonderful people called the Matsés. They sounded great. They were said to imitate the jaguar. I thought, that sounds rather sort of groovy. What a role model. The top predator of the Amazon. I could settle with these jaguar people. And sure enough, I found a wonderful man who's called Pablito. And you could tell he was a jaguar person, a Matsés, because he had spines in his lips. Incredibly generous man. He said he would take me on for this project. The two frontiersmen who'd helped me get to Pablito and the Matsés, they now retreated downriver, and it was up to me and this wonderful man, Pablito, and the rest of the Matsés, who, by the way, was only contacted in 1969, so very, very remote people. They would be the ones to give me the ability to get out of the forest, because that was the only way out for me now. Not that I really wanted a choice, I suppose, at this stage, but actually there wasn't any other choice anyway, because there was no other exit. So it was up to me, and I thought, how romantic to be with Pablito. This was just as I imagined as a boy, and it got even better. There was Pablito, he used to walk off into the forest with me for, the first week, when he realised that I was scaring away all the local wildlife. And that was a bit of a problem. Pablito had a lot of children. I said to Pablito, how many children have you got? He said, 30. But it always sounded like an estimate, so I don't really know fully. And certainly it was a lot of children, and as I said, I was scaring everything away. I'm very, very big, you might have noticed, and the local people were really quite short, and certainly they were a better size than me. I wasn't adept in the forest, I knew it quite well by now. But these people were walking along incredibly stealthily, and I was scaring away the wildlife because I had my big paratrooper boots on, and it wasn't looking good for Pablito's family because basically they weren't getting anything to eat because everything was running away whenever I was walking around. Pablito passed me on to his younger brother. Younger brother got fed up with me. He passed me on to his son. Getting a little bit embarrassing now. This boy at the back, he was only 10 years old. You know what 10-year-old boys are like. He basically wanted to make a man of me. He just thought, this is pathetic. And he took me out into the forest in front of all his friends. Big mistake, because of course he had to come back half an hour later and I'd failed to catch anything. Even the animals that he'd tied up in the forest in preparation, I'd somehow managed to let escape. And so he came back in tears, and it was all very embarrassing for everyone. He passed me on to his younger brother. Younger brother was only 5 years old. And this little boy, the little brute, he wasn't even allowed proper adult bows and arrows. He was allowed toy bows and arrows, and he began zapping me with these little arrows because he decided far more exciting than hunting with me was simply to hunt me. And that's what he did. He began to stalk me through the forest, getting me with his little arrows, and then he got bored with that, and he used to sneak out at night with his little chums and set up all sorts of little booby traps. And then I'd fall back into these traps. And in the end, I had to be rescued by his older sister, Lucy. She was amazing. I began to realise the depth of knowledge. Even that little boy, the 5-year-old, he was an amazing little hunter. He could certainly hunt me, but he could even hunt little things. This girl, Lucy, she knew 20 sorts of herb simply for one particular use, that was disinfectant. So she could disinfect a cut with this particular species. I counted 19 others. Those are the ones just that I learned from her. This little girl, 8 years old, she was this great gatherer, and that's what the females did among the Madzes. They gathered, the boys were hunters, and I began thinking, what is my strategy going to be like? Am I going to be more like a hunter, or am I going to be more like a gatherer? Because it was becoming very, very clear. The children were incredibly competent, and I was incredibly incompetent, and these people would never go on a walk through the forest alone, let alone for 300 miles. So I was starting to think I might have chewed a little bit more than off than I could digest. Pablito decided after 3 months it was worth teaching me, and this is him teaching me how to make a mouse trap. They do have rather big mice in the Amazon, I ought to say. Little mouse comes along, and boom, it triggers the mechanism and the log flattens it, and you get a sort of flat mouse for supper. It's like roadkill, to be honest, but it's food. The trouble with this was that I wasn't going to be able to build mouse traps. I was going to be fighting for my life. It was becoming really, really clear how big this task was. The locals thought it was madness. I thought it was madness. Everyone thought it was madness. But that really was the only way out of the forest. But also, you know what it's like when you've got a project of your own. You feel proud of that project. You know that whether you succeed or not, it's up to you. And there was something very, very exciting about that. This was my great chance. After 10 years of being an adventurer, doing all sorts of things, this is my big chance to know really whether I could do this journey on my own with preparation by these people. So I was also getting quite excited by this challenge coming up, trying to work out different strategies from the local people. And Pablito said, what you've got to do is try and identify allies in this place. There are all these species battling it out, and you've got to find out what's on your side. There didn't seem to be all that much, really, to be on my side. The Madzes had quite a few allies. I had 1 or 2. But Pablito started helping me label this place of all these highly competitive animals and plants. So things that I could grasp immediately from the forest to make a house, to make medicine, to make food. And gradually I began to feel a little bit more easy about this environment. I started to feel it was a little bit more like a resource. And Pablito sat me down after about another month, and he began painting my face with these jaguar stripes. And I still don't know really what that meant to him that day, but it clearly was some sort of sign of acceptance by him, by his family, by his people. And also, unfortunately, it was a sort of sign that I might have graduated and it was time to go. And I was a little bit worried about that, obviously, because I was going to die. And yet, of course, this pride again, this feeling of this was my chance. And you couldn't hang around in the clearing forever. It was amazing living with the Madzes, one of the remotest people in the world, learning all these things from them. But actually, now it was my chance to see whether I had learnt enough to survive alone out there. And so now was the time to say goodbye. I walked off with these 2 men. Their last words weren't really very encouraging. I mean, I was sort of hoping for good luck or something like that. You can see the men are walking away. The man's actually in tears there. And his last words were, no one's going to be able to bury him, which was frankly depressing, actually. It really was. I was just hoping for a little bit more of a launch out than that. But on the other hand, I could see their point, really, I suppose. They had actually taken me to the edge of their territory because they didn't want me to die on their land, which was, fair enough, fair's fair. They did give me all this time. But I also thought, wow, this is my moment. I sat myself down. I do this on all expeditions. I gather myself together. My expeditions are solo. It's all about immersion with the local people, learning skills. But there'll be this moment of launching out. And I sat myself down with the map and did a sort of reality check. Thought to myself, okay, what are my strategies? What are the most important things going to be in this this bid to survive these 300 miles? Well, I thought it was going to be about focus, effectively. It was going to be about keeping myself disciplined, having a very, very clear idea of my target and maintaining my vigilance all the time. So I decided what I'd do is shave every day. I'd already worked out a strategy for dividing my pack into two, so that I had one of everything in 2 packs in case I lost one pack somehow. I had the top packet full of my medical gear. I had all sorts of survival strategies, a plan A, which was my optimum plan, plan B for deviating from that plan, plan C, that was the exit strategy, always need an exit strategy. The Americans should know that from various places. And in fact, oh dear, is that controversial? It probably is. Anyway, we all need an exit strategy in life, and here was my exit strategy, which essentially was to go back on my steps and get out through the help of the local people. So I was getting myself geared up. And by the way, people think of me as a sort of risk taker. I don't see myself as a risk taker at all. I see myself as a challenge taker because risk is something I'm aware of all the time. I'm thinking of odds all the time in terms of survival. You've got to if you're alone out there with no backup plan, no satellite phone. It's up to you and the resources around you. So off I went. Very, very exciting. And the first 2 weeks went quite well, really. Then my drinking from a vine. I'm drinking the latest lovely distilled. I'm trying to work in a joke to do with whiskey. I don't think it's really going to work, quite honestly. Anyway, there I was, drinking from a vine. You can do this with vines. It's brilliant. You've got to get the right vine, because if you cut the wrong vine, you get strychnine, which obviously is not so good first thing in the morning. But you can drink that vine and drink that water, and it was great, just participating in the forest like this, feeling part of it, knowing that you're actually doing quite well as you went along. So that was the first 2 weeks. But gradually, things began to go wrong. Because the locals, of course, whenever they couldn't manage to catch a monkey like this, they simply walked off home. They used to go on these little hunting expeditions together in a group. If they didn't catch anything, well, you go back to the gardens, you eat from the gardens, or the rivers, of course. Most of these communities that I've lived with have something like 60% of their protein will come from the river, from the fish and so on. So a huge resource there, which I didn't have. And I began to realize I had to be on the top of my game every single day in order to get something to eat in this place. This is after spending years, I should say, in different jungles around the world, let alone having this training here with the Matsez. And I was no longer at the top of my game. And I realized that one day when I was trying to hunt spider monkeys like this, I was no longer there with my bow and arrow trying to catch a spider monkey. I was simply hanging around at the bottom of the tree, a fruit tree, hoping for handouts from these monkeys. And the monkeys are actually quite generous in a way. They throw things down at me, and I suppose they just wanted to scare me off, or they found it was amusing to chuck down fruit. Well, I was now becoming dependent on this fruit they were chucking down. Or if not, then I was certainly hanging around the fruit trees looking for fruit that had been discarded over the years, or rather that season. So this was a resource, but I was no longer essentially in command of my destiny. I was now reliant on these handouts. I was becoming more like a vagabond, more like someone who was just hoping for luck to be on his side. I was always hoping for fruit to be lying around at the bottom of these trees, and it sometimes was, and it sometimes wasn't. And gradually, I got hungrier and hungrier, weaker and weaker, and I began making mistakes. This is a lance head. It's very... It's a tricky old snake. I'm a great believer in snakes actually not being a problem in rainforests. There are not so many people who've spent so long alone in rainforests as me, and snakes generally aren't a problem. But that is when you're aware of your surroundings. I was no longer really aware. I kept on stumbling along, I kept on making mistakes, afraid I had to kill this snake, which I didn't want to do. But it's one of those amazing snakes, you know. It has anger management issues, I always think. But the other thing is that 1 drop of venom will coagulate 2 litres of blood. It's one of those handy facts, you know, you can go away with tonight. No, it really is amazing. You think you don't have that many litres of blood in your body, actually, and 1 drop of it will coagulate 2 litres of it. Anyway, it's one of those thought-provoking thoughts that come to you as a snake approaches and tries to go for you. Anyway, so I killed this snake, and it was very sad, but I was really starting to struggle now. More weeks went by, and that's the photo I took of myself after about a month of not having seen anyone. I'm not looking in top form. In fact, I was pretty sure when I took this photo of myself that I was going to die. It was very, very lonely out there. I don't know how much you've been alone. Maybe some of you have been alone for a week or so. It's not so usual for the human species. And it is actually very difficult in rainforest where you're in a place of biological and chemical warfare. There's no horizon to reassure you, to tell you your progress. You're just being bombarded by all these species who have adapted maybe over 80 million years. They're the best of their sort. There are stains on these leaves. There are acid burns, there are spores that are coming down. But this, as I say, is a place of warfare. And I was walking through the middle of it, and it's survival of the fittest, and I was pretty sure I was no longer fit. And I realized I really needed a miracle in order to survive, which is a bad sort of thought. But I was given one. I got a second chance. Unbelievable. I stumbled across an illegal logging camp. Very, very lucky indeed. I walked into the camp, couldn't believe my luck. I saw this bloke appearing with this gun. I thought, oh no, here we go again. And he said to me, "You have got to be British." I said, "Oh, funny enough, yes, I am." And he's actually a very nice bloke, you know, when he decided not to shoot me. He said, "You're alone." I can't believe it. There's 15 of us. We're struggling along with our logging camp. You know we shouldn't be here, but come on, we're all together in it out here. And it felt like that. I thought, this is amazing. We're all struggling in this place. 15 of them, they were having a hard time. Very, very poor people, actually. But this bloke said, "Look, settle with us for a little bit, a couple of weeks, get your strength back. I'll allow 2 of my men to walk with you through the trees. They'll send you on your way, and you'll be fine. I'm sure we'll help you along." So I did that. I spent a bit of time with these people, felt much better. 2 men walked with me, 2 of these loggers, through the trees, and eventually we came to a river. It was this very river, a little bit further away, and we came to this river crossing that we had to do. We cut down a tree. This is what you have to do when you come to a tree in the Amazon. If you've got to try and get across a bit of water, you cut down a tree, make a bridge. So these 2 people very, very kindly helped me with this. They picked up my 2 bags. They walked across this tree bridge we'd made, and I was just about to get on that tree myself when the 2 men turned around and kicked the tree away. And they walked off into the forest, having robbed me and left me to die. And you know what? I was furious. I was absolutely livid. I thought, what is going on here? I was so disappointed. I really was, because, you know what? I had sort of been dying when they rescued me, and then they got me back on my feet again, and now they've done this. It's all very, very confusing, and I was sort of just so depressed. People say when you know you're going to die, that you start praying. I couldn't pray. I'd love to say I stood there. I was a real man. I was a real adult. I took it well. All my survival training came into action. I'd had all sorts of adventures. I'd been shot. I'd been left to die other times. I'd sort of got through. And I should have been prepared for this, but nothing could quite prepare me for that slap in the face. These 2 people who I'd trusted, who'd helped me so much, and suddenly decided to change their mind and rob me. It was devastating. I lost that sense of belief that we all need, that helps bring about action, that brings about commitment. So I couldn't believe in God. I couldn't believe in myself. I couldn't believe in anything very much. And you know what? The funny thing about dying in the tropical rainforest is it takes quite a long time. You're sort of sitting there feeling sorry for yourself. You know, I was twiddling my thumb, sort of waiting to die, feeling sorry for myself. It's really pathetic, I know. An ant would walk by, another ant would walk by, and I thought, oh dear, nothing's happening really. And I began daydreaming, and it's a very odd thought, really, and you have to sort of bear with me for a second, but I realised I was wearing my girlfriend's T-shirt. You might think, that is just strange, but actually there is a good logic behind this, which was that way back in England, when I was packing in Shepherd's Bush, I had a sharp knife. This is before security was all that good at airports. I had a sharp knife. I was wrapping my things up to go in my rucksack, and I saw my girlfriend's T-shirt. I thought, ooh, she won't mind. I've wrapped my knife up in her T-shirt. Thank you. And I popped it into my rucksack. Anyway, I began thinking of this. I'm thinking, how embarrassing to die. Might be found in this girlfriend's T-shirt that I happen to be wearing. Anyway, these silly, silly thoughts, totally trivial thoughts, they began building. I began thinking of my girlfriend. I'm thinking, oh, I better hand back the girlfriend's T-shirt. And I began thinking of the girlfriend, and then I thought of my dear old mum, waiting at home, wondering what's happening to me. And I thought, oh dear, I'm going to have to make an effort. And it became I know, yes, it shouldn't have come out quite like that. I'm going to have to make an effort. And I began galvanizing myself. I thought, okay, what I'll do is put myself on a path. I'll walk and walk and walk, I'll get to a path somehow. Then maybe I could allow myself to die, because someone will find my body, and it's better than nothing. And then I suddenly thought, do you know what? I can take all the risks I like. This is a really extraordinary thought for someone in my profession. I said to you earlier, I'm not really a risk taker. I'm thinking about risk all the time. Okay, it is a bit risky what I do, but I'm thinking about risk all the time. But suddenly I didn't have to worry about that, because I was going to die anyway. I could take all the risks in the world. It was a rather weird, surreal moment. I suddenly felt rather excited and happy. Rather than thinking I was going to die, I thought, this is brilliant. I can start taking lots of risks. It's a very, very weird thought. Perhaps just because I hadn't eaten properly or something, and my mind began spinning about thinking what I could do. I thought, what I'll do is walk down this riverbank. I'll find a way across, because I don't have to worry about luggage anymore. Wonderful. So I jumped into the water, swam across, quite easy, scrambled up the other bank, didn't have to worry about luggage, brilliant. Walked up the other side of the other side of the riverbank, came to where these two men had abandoned me. And I began tracking them. I began thinking, that little girl Lucia, that little 8-year-old girl. I thought, if a little 8-year-old girl can survive out here, maybe even I can. So I began thinking about this little girl Lucy and how she used to track deer through the forest and show me how leaves had been turned up by different people's feet. Sometimes a leaf would be wetter on one side than the other because it had been turned over. I'd be looking at all these little clues, stalking these two men. And by nightfall, I'd found their camp. I waited for to get really, really dark, and I sneaked into their camp. I got back one of my bags and waited till dawn, and then started walking out of the forest. I'd only got one of my bags. It still didn't look all that good, to be honest, because I was 100 miles from the outside world. And you may think, oh, heaven's sake, 100 miles, what a wimp. It's actually a long, long way. This is the forest that I walked out of. It is dark in there. Remember, I wasn't in that good physical shape anyway. I had actually had dysentery for 6 weeks. So it was a grim, grim place to struggle out of. 100 miles, that's like from London to Bath, long, long way. And it was solid forest. There's no one out there for 100 miles. And I had to get it absolutely right. I had a compass from my little survival kit, no map anymore. I thought, okay, I'll start off on a bearing. I couldn't believe in walking 100 miles. But I could believe in 100 paces. I thought, I can virtually see 100 paces through these trees, 100 meters. So what I'll do is count every single pace. And I'll notch up every 100 paces on a little stick. So I got a little stick. And now I had a measure of my progress. And it started to feel a little bit better. By the end of that first day, I'd had quite a few paces worth of notches. And I realized I needed a bigger stick. So I got a bigger stick. And now I began to envisage the end of the journey. I thought, I can see the end of the journey, not just all this darkness. I can see it at the end of my stick. I can visualize that at the end of that stick, I will be free. I'll be alive. I'll be with people again. I'll be in the daylight. So that began lending me encouragement. I began getting back my sense of belief. I began working on different strategies to walk through the forest. I realized I wasn't really alone, because these maths were with me in my mind. All their lessons, or at least enough of them, were in my head. And I began thinking of the maths and all these other people who'd helped me on different parts of my career in different rainforests. And gradually I made my way through the forest. I began running to the next river, stopping at the river, relaxing, gathering my energy while I fished for piranha. And I should say at this stage that the difference between life and death in a place like this is probably about a 4-inch length of wire, because you need that little bit of wire to tie on the end of your fishing hook, because otherwise piranhas simply bite through your fishing line. But with that 4-inch little bit of wire, you stop the piranhas biting off your hook, and that enables you to readily eat meat, because piranhas are hungry little things. You can find things to put on your hook pretty easily, and that's the easiest form of protein in this sort of environment. So once I was getting this trick right, I was able to eat protein, I was getting it stronger, and then I'd march off again, counting every single pace, heading towards the southeast. And finally, much weaker, but essentially back in some sort of control, I came out of the rainforest. And there I am. It's not it's not Indiana Jones, is it? Let's face it, it's not brilliant. It's not the photo I wanted. I wanted to be like this, rather like the publicity photo, actually. That's better. I think I was probably taken in Kew Gardens or somewhere. This is the real thing. The boots have gone, they've rotted away, the trousers have rotted away, the socks have gone. There's a bit of trouser left, but those were long trousers when I started this journey. The only bit of clothing that had done quite well was my girlfriend's T-shirt. You can see it there. But on the other hand, I'm not in that bad condition. A lot of you have been to the tropics. You know what tropical ulcers are like. One little bite from a mosquito can get infected. My legs are in pretty good condition. I'm shaving again. It's not, I'm not a total wreck. And I pulled off my mission. 7.5 months after I began my journey, I'd come out the other side. So I pulled off my childhood dream of being an explorer. I'd managed to pull off this greatest rainforest crossing you can make, essentially. And it was exciting, it was wonderful for me personally, totally irrelevant to the rest of the world. That's not what it's about for me. It's about taking on these personal challenges, finding a way through them. And there are lows, terrible lows, but there are wonderful highs, like the moment when I came out of this forest, but like also the moment when the mat says, embraced me, endorsed me, enabled me to do this journey. And the journeys carry on. It's always about different environments, different problems, like in the Namib Desert, maybe, crocodiles. Siberia, dog team, I tried to cross the Bering Strait. Crocodiles, I'm sure you've all done this at home. This is the sort of thing I do. And you may be thinking to yourself, I don't want to be an explorer. What on earth is he talking about? Why do it? But we all have our dream, don't we? Everyone in this room has an idea, a vision of what they want to do with their life. And that's the same for me. It just happens that this is my dream. You know what, if I could just end on a sort of tangential thought, I'm often described as someone who's used up 9 of his lives. I don't know how many lives you've got, actually, but you got 8? No? Oh, that's good. 9? You got 9. Wonderful. Well, I'm said to have used up 9 of my lives. It's irrelevant, isn't it? Because the fact is, I didn't die. You can say I almost died 9 times or not. It doesn't matter. I didn't die. I got away with it. And maybe it's the wrong way of thinking. It's not about how many times you almost died. It's how much potential any of us get out of our life. In fact, it's about how much we live. Thank you.